The day I discovered my own son-in-law had been robbing me was the same day he discovered he had picked the wrong father to fool. Before I continue with this story, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now because you won't believe what happened next. And if you're already a subscriber, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our real-life stories. My name is Roberto. I'm 62 years old, a retired accountant, and the father of Camilla, a girl I raised on my own after my wife passed away when she was only 8. For years, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to give her everything a child deserves. Private school, English lessons, ballet, swimming. Every cent I earned was with her future in mind. Camilla was always my absolute priority. When she turned 18 and got into a private university for business administration, I was so proud I cried at her high school graduation. "Dad, you're my hero," she said that day, hugging me tightly. Those words are etched in my memory like a treasure. At 24, she met Diego. I confess, from the very first day, something about that young man bothered me. He was 28 and claimed to work in digital business, a vague expression that always made me suspicious. When I asked specifically what he did, the answers were always evasive. Digital marketing, dad, online consulting. It's complicated to explain, but I saw the way Camilla looked at him. She was in love in a way that reminded me of how I used to look at her mother. Their courtship lasted 2 years. During that time, I tried to get to know Diego better. He was charming, I'll admit. He was well-spoken, dressed well, and always arrived with flowers for Camilla. But there was something in his eyes that bothered me. A calculating coldness that would appear in moments when he thought I wasn't paying attention. When they announced their engagement, I swallowed my reservations and supported my daughter's decision. If she's happy, I'm happy, I thought. I helped pay for part of the wedding, 35,000 reais that I had saved to renovate my house. Why do I need a beautiful house if my daughter is building her life? I justified to myself. The ceremony was beautiful. Seeing Camilla in her white dress, radiant with happiness, momentarily made me forget all my worries about Diego. She was fulfilled, and that was all that mattered. In my speech, I said, "Camilla, you are the light of my life. Diego, welcome to the family. Take good care of my treasure." After the wedding, they moved into a rented apartment in Barra da Tijuca. I continued living in my house in Copacabana, the same one where Camilla grew up. It was a simple house, but full of memories. In her room, I kept everything exactly as she had left it. The stuffed animals, her college books, the photos from our trip to Disney when she turned 16. For the first few months of her marriage, Camilla would visit me every week. We talked about everything: work, plans, dreams. She had landed a job at an events company and was loving it. Diego was still involved in his digital business, but at least he was contributing to the household expenses, according to her. It was in the 4th month of their marriage that things started to change. Camilla's visits became more sporadic. "Dad, I'm so busy," she'd say. "Diego needs my help with some projects." I understood. A new marriage, adjustments, it's normal. But then the requests for money began. First, it was something small. "Dad, can you lend me 500 reais? The credit card bill was high this month." Of course, I lent it to her. She was my daughter. 2 weeks later, "Dad, another 800 reais?" Diego's car broke down. Again, I transferred the money without question. The requests became more frequent, and the amounts grew larger. "Dad, 2,000 reais for a business opportunity Diego found." "Dad, 1,500 reais because the apartment had a plumbing issue." "Dad, 3,000 reais because Diego's client was late with a payment." In 6 months, I had already lent them almost 20,000 reais. The worst part was that the word lent was becoming further and further from reality. There was never any talk of when it would be paid back, no payment plan, and I didn't have the heart to ask for it. She was my daughter. What hurt me most was seeing how Camilla was changing. She was more distant, colder. When I tried to talk about personal things, about how she was feeling, she would change the subject. "I'm fine, Dad. I'm happy." But I could see in her eyes that something was different. There was a constant worry, a weight she was carrying. It was on a Thursday in March that everything changed. I was organizing my documents to file my income tax return when I noticed that my checkbook was missing some pages. I went to check my bank account online and nearly fell out of my chair. There were 2 cashed checks that I hadn't written. one for 4,000 reais and another for 2,500 reais. The signatures were very similar to mine, but there were small details that an experienced accountant like me can spot. The R in my name was slightly different, and the curve of the B in Roberto wasn't the same. My blood ran cold. Someone had forged my signature, someone who had access to my checkbook, who knew my handwriting, who knew exactly how I signed my name. I immediately called the bank and blocked the account. I requested all the information about the checks. They were cashed at different branches, but both were in Barra da Tijuca, the area where my daughter lived with Diego. I stayed up all night, analysing the situation. Who could have done this? I was a private person. I didn't have many close friends. The only people who regularly visited my house were Camilla and, by extension, Diego. On Friday morning, I went to the police station and filed a report for document forgery and fraud. The detective, Dr. Martins, was an experienced man who listened to me attentively. Mr. Roberto, cases like this are more common than you might think. Unfortunately, most of the time the perpetrator is someone close to the victim, someone who has easy access to their documents and knows their habits. I left the station with a broken heart, but determined to find the truth. I couldn't accuse anyone without proof. I needed to be sure. Over the weekend, I reviewed all my financial transactions from the past few months. That's when I noticed a disturbing pattern. Camilla's requests for money always coincided with periods close to the forgeries. It was as if someone was testing the waters, seeing how much I was willing to give voluntarily before resorting to more drastic methods. On Monday, I installed a discreet security camera in my living room, pointing at the desk where I usually left my documents. If anyone entered my house and went through my things, I would have proof. I didn't have to wait long. On Wednesday, Camilla called to say she was coming to see me. "Dad, I miss you. I'll bring some tasty treats for us to eat together." My heart filled with joy. It had been weeks since we'd had time just for the two of us. She arrived around 3 p.m, bringing brigadeiros and beijinhos, my favorite sweets that she always made when she was a child. We talked about work, about how married life was. She seemed more relaxed than the last few times, more affectionate. "Dad, I'm just going to use the restroom quickly," she said after about an hour of conversation. I stayed in the living room, savouring the sweets, and remembering when she was little and would make these same treats to cheer me up after a hard day's work. She took longer in the bathroom than usual. Then she came back, stayed for another 20 minutes, gave me a kiss, and left. "Dad, you're my whole life. I love you so much." That night, I reviewed the camera footage. My world fell apart. When Camilla said she was going to the bathroom, she didn't. She came straight into the living room, opened the drawer of my desk where I kept my checkbook, tore out 3 pages and put them in her purse. All of this happened while I was distracted in the kitchen. I felt as if I'd been punched in the gut. My own daughter, the girl I had raised with so much love, who was the center of my life, was stealing from me. I went 3 days without proper sleep, trying to process what I had discovered. How did this happen? What had I done wrong in raising her? How did my little girl get to this point? On Friday, I gathered my courage and called Camilla. "Honey, I need to talk to you. It's important. Dad, I'm busy right now. Can it be this weekend?" "No, Camilla. It has to be now. Come to my house." There must have been something in my tone of voice that she noticed, because after a moment of silence, she said, "Okay, Dad. I'll be there in an hour." When she arrived, I was sitting at the living room table with my laptop open to the camera footage. I didn't say anything at first. I just pointed to the screen. "Sit here next to me, honey." She approached with a curious expression, but when she saw the images, her face changed completely. First surprise, then panic, and finally resignation. "Dad, I can explain." "Yes, you can, Camilla. I'm listening." The tears started streaming down her face. "Dad, it wasn't my idea. Diego, he said you wouldn't miss it, that you have money saved up, that you wouldn't notice a few missing checks. He said it was just until things got better for him. And you thought that was right, Camilla? To steal from your own father?" "It wasn't stealing, Dad. It was supposed to be a loan. We were going to pay it all back. Forging my signature isn't a loan, honey. It's a crime. I could have put you in jail." She looked at me with wide eyes. "Dad, you wouldn't do that to me." "No, I wouldn't. Because despite everything, you're still my daughter." but I need to understand how we got to this point. What she told me over the next 2 hours was one of the most painful conversations of my life. Diego hadn't been working for months. The digital business was a lie. He spent his days playing games online and demanding that Camilla support the household on her salary. When her money wasn't enough, he started pressuring her to ask me, "Your dad has money, Camilla. He owes it to you after all the years you took care of him." When the requests became too frequent and I started asking questions, it was his idea to steal directly. He said, "You'd never find out, Dad, that you're too trusting, too naive." He said, "People like you are easy to fool. People like me, fathers who love their children unconditionally." And where is Diego now, Camilla? At home. Playing games, probably. Call him, tell him we're here talking and that he needs to come over. Dad, he won't want to come. Then tell him we've discovered everything and that he has 2 options. Come talk to me or talk to the police. 15 minutes later, Diego was at my door. He walked in with an arrogant posture that surprised me. I had expected nervousness, maybe even remorse. But no, he seemed annoyed at being bothered. "So, Roberto," Camilla said, "you found out about the checks." The coldness with which he spoke shocked me. He didn't even try to deny it or apologize. "I did, Diego, and now I want to understand what you two plan to do about it." He laughed. He literally laughed in my face. "Roberto, relax. It was just a little cash. You won't even miss it. And look, technically, that money belongs to Camilla anyway. You owe it to her after all her years of sacrifice." I felt my blood pressure rising, but I kept my cool. "Sacrifice? What sacrifice, Diego? Man, the girl took care of you her whole life. She gave up boyfriends in her teens, opportunities, all to stay by your side. Now that she has her own family, it's only fair that you help out." I looked at Camilla, who had her head down, clearly uncomfortable with her husband's words. It was incredible how he was twisting our story. Camilla had never been forced to take care of me. She always had complete freedom to make her own choices. "Diego, you forged my signature. That's a crime." "Crime is a strong word, Roberto. It was just an adaptation. And look, if you're smart, you'll pretend this never happened. Because if this story gets out, the one who will suffer most is your daughter. Do you want to see Camilla's name dragged through the mud?" The audacity of that man was astounding. He was threatening me in my own home. It was in that moment that I realized I wasn't dealing with someone who had made a mistake out of desperation. I was dealing with a criminal who had chosen my daughter as his next victim. "You know, Diego, you're right about one thing. I do need to be smart." I picked up my cell phone and showed it to them. "That's why I've spent the last few days investigating you." Diego's expression changed immediately. "You knew I worked as an accountant for 40 years, didn't you? During those years, I learned a lot about financial investigation, so I decided to use my knowledge and contacts to find out more about my son-in-law." I opened a folder on my laptop. "Your real name is Diego Henrique Santos, 31 years old, not 28 like you said. You have a criminal record for fraud in 2 states. You've run similar scams on at least 4 different families, always getting close to young women and using them to gain access to their family's assets." Diego's face was turning pale, but he still tried to maintain his arrogant posture. "That doesn't prove anything." "Oh no? Then let's continue. In 2019, you married a young woman named Juliana in Belo Horizonte. You convinced her to borrow money from her parents for an investment. When her parents discovered it was a scam, you disappeared with 45,000 reais. The marriage was never officially registered, of course." Camilla looked at me, her eyes wide. "In 2020, it was Sandra's turn, in São Paulo. Same story. She even sold her car to help you with a digital business. You vanished with 30,000 reais." "Dad, is this true?" Camilla asked, her voice trembling. "In 2021, Patricia, in Curitiba. This time you were more ambitious. You managed to get her to mortgage her family's house to invest in one of your shell companies. 120,000 reais. Her family lost their home, Camilla." Diego stood up abruptly. "Enough! You can't prove any of this." "Yes, I can. I have the police reports from all 4 victims right here. I have the photos they sent me when I contacted them. It's funny how you always use the same methods, Diego. Or should I call you by your real name, which is Carlos Eduardo?" The silence in the room was deafening. Camilla was in shock, staring at her husband as if he were a stranger. Camilla, did you know he's still married to Sandra? The divorce was never processed. Technically, your marriage is invalid. She began to cry uncontrollably. And there's more. Diego, Carlos, he has a mistress in Niterói. Her name is Bruna. She also thinks she's going to marry him soon. In fact, she's pregnant. Diego, or Carlos, was visibly desperate now. Roberto, listen, we can work this out another way. I can disappear from Camilla's life. You can have your daughter back, and everyone will be happy. It's not that simple, Carlos. You committed crimes. Against me. Against my daughter. Against other families. I can't just let you walk away to find your next victim. I picked up my phone. That's why yesterday I contacted the other victims. They have all given their statements to the police. Detective Martins is waiting to have a word with you. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was 2 police officers. Mr. Roberto, we're from the 12th Precinct. We're here to execute an arrest warrant for Carlos Eduardo Silva Santos, also known as Diego Henrique Santos. Diego tried to run, but he didn't even make it to the living room door. He was detained without resistance, but he was screaming threats. Roberto, you don't know who you're messing with. This isn't over. I know people who can make trouble for you. Carlos, I said calmly, you forgot one important thing. He looked at me with hatred. I'm not the naive, trusting person you thought I was. I'm an accountant with 40 years of experience who spent his career dealing with financial criminals. The only difference is that before, they were trying to rob companies. This time, one of them tried to rob my family. After they took Diego away, Camilla and I sat in silence for a long time. She was devastated, but I knew it had been necessary. Dad, how did you find all this out? Honey, when you work in financial investigation for decades, you develop an instinct. From the very first day, something about Diego bothered me, but I respected your choice. I only really started investigating after I found the forged checks. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for everything. Camilla, you were as much his victim as I was. He manipulated you. He used you. The important thing now is for you to recover from this. In the months that followed, I helped Camilla rebuild her life. The annulment process was relatively quick, considering Diego had used false documents and was already married to someone else. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison for aggravated fraud, criminal conspiracy, and use of a forged document. Camilla moved back in with me temporarily. It was a difficult time for her. Besides the humiliation of discovering she'd been deceived, she carried the guilt of having betrayed me. We talked a lot, went to therapy together, and slowly, our relationship began to heal. Dad, how can you forgive me after what I did? Camilla, you were manipulated by a professional criminal. He studied you, identified your weaknesses, and exploited your love for me against me. You were a victim, not a criminal. Today, 2 years later, Camilla is dating a young man named Felipe, who is a veterinarian and whom I completely approve of. He is transparent, honest, and most importantly, he treats my daughter with the respect she deserves. Dad, what would you say to other people who are going through a similar situation? I would say, trust your instincts, but verify the facts. Love shouldn't blind us to the warning signs. And most importantly, don't be afraid to investigate the people who get close to the ones you love. Sometimes, protecting the ones we love means being suspicious even of the ones they choose to love. The entire experience taught me that being a father isn't just about giving unconditional love. Sometimes you have to be a detective, an investigator, a protector. You have to be prepared to be the villain of the story if it means saving your child from a real danger. Diego thought he had found the perfect father to fool, a lonely widower devoted to his daughter with financial resources and an apparently naive nature. What he never imagined was that he had chosen someone who had spent his entire professional life unmasking people exactly like him. Sometimes the right people are in the right places at the right time. In this case, the right father was protecting the right daughter from the wrong criminal. If you enjoyed this real-life story, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. We have many more stories of justice and resilience to share with you. And remember, always trust your instincts but never fail to check the facts. Until next time.